Hello friends. I thought we could do a little bit of quarantine cooking together. I have these very ripe bananas that have been screaming at me to make something, and I wanted to make something that was a little healthier than a baked good. I know we're all loving the baked goods right now, but I wanted to do something a little bit fresher and a little healthier. And so I have this recipe for banana lime magic bars. They are truly magic. They are delicious. They are raw and vegan, and there's no cooking involved or baking. I'm going to show you how to do it. It's really easy, but they're freezer bars. And once they're set in the freezer, you can actually keep them in the fridge, and they're really good straight out of the fridge. So the ingredients are, we've got pecans and walnuts for the crust, which is a little bit different than my original recipe, but that's all I have in the house. And I think I have just enough. We've got limes, coconut butter, coconut oil, bananas, vanilla, and medjool dates. So I'm going to show you how to assemble them basically, because it really is just assembling. It's not anything very complicated. So the first thing we're going to do is prepare the crust, and before we prepare the crust, we actually need to prepare the pan. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I have a little trick. So here is it's a loaf pan. It's a 9x5 pan. These work really well in this size of pan. And you're going to want to line it with parchment paper so that when you go to remove the bars, it actually just lifts right out. It's really easy. So you just do a piece of parchment paper. We could actually, we'll do it this way. It's a little bit bigger than the size of the pan. And then a little trick is to drizzle some coconut oil in there so that when you press the paper into the pan, it actually kind of sticks. And I just like to use the lid to drizzle. So I'm just doing a little bit, like probably half a teaspoon. And I just move it around with my hands, spread it around, and then take your parchment paper and just kind of shove it in there. It's not gonna look perfect. It's not gonna fit super perfectly. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to go in there so that you have a really easy time removing the bars when they're all set. That's what it looks like. So see, it's not perfect. It's just kind of in there. And the key is just that when you're gonna press the crust into here, and then we're gonna pour the filling on top. So as long as none of the crust or the filling is going behind the parchment paper, then you're totally fine. So I'm gonna set this aside for now, and we're gonna work on our crust. So you can use a food processor, or you could use a blender or a Vitamix. I'm gonna use my Vitamix. So I have about like a cup and a quarter of pecans and a tiny bit of walnuts, but again, I'm mixing it because that's all I had in the house, and I'm not about to go to the store right now just for one special ingredient. So these go in to the blender or the food processor, and I'm gonna blend these first before I add the other ingredients, just to make sure that I get a good crumb. So I'm just starting on low, and I think this will actually be sufficient. Yep, that looks good. So it's just crumbly. Can you see that? It's kind of like dirt. If you do it for too long, it'll kind of turn into nut butter, and we don't exactly want that. And then we need 7 dates. So I like using medjool dates, and these are not pitted, so you have to make sure that you remove the pit. So all I do is I just smash them and then take out the pit. So that's 2. These are pretty big. If you get really small ones, you might have to add an extra one. That's 3. 3. So the dates are sticky and 4, and they give the crust its sweetness, 5. And what's nice about dates, when you use dates as a sweetener, is that it's a whole food. So they have all of 6. They have all of the minerals and other nutrients that your body needs to process the sugar that's in the dates. Whereas with refined sugar, everything is stripped away, and so your body has to use, it's like your body has to come up with its own resources to process that sugar, whereas you've got all the minerals right here. So that's 7, and that's our dates. Okay, and then we need 2 tablespoons of coconut oil. So you want the coconut oil to be at least soft, if not melted. So you might need to heat it up in a jar, like place the jar in a bowl of hot water to melt it if you live somewhere where it's really cold right now and the coconut oil is solidified at room temperature. So that's 2 tablespoons. And then we're gonna do 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Make sure you use pure vanilla extract. It's expensive, but it's totally worth it. And then we're gonna do 1/4 teaspoon of salt. This is 1/8 of a teaspoon. I don't know what happened to my 1/4 teaspoon measure, so I'll do 2 of these. And I'm gonna do Himalayan pink salt because that's what I always use. Just make sure it's a fine salt, so sea salt or Himalayan pink salt, or Celtic salt or kosher salt. Okay, so we've got everything in there. And now we're gonna blend it until it becomes dough-like. So again, start on low. And I'm gonna have to use my tamper to get this blended. Show you what this looks like. I'm always amazed at how fast the Vitamix works. But you can also use another kind of blender, or you can use a food processor. So I'm actually going to use a spoon for this. Excuse me as I do a little shuffle here. Okay, so what you're going to do is just turn the dough out into the pan. And just be careful if you're I'm using a metal spoon, you don't want to knock against the blades of the Vitamix too much. Metal against metal is not great. So just make sure you get all of it as much as possible. Show you what the dough looks like. Like that. It's actually kind of like a Lara bar. It's just dates and nuts. Okay. So there you have it in there. And now you're gonna press it into the bottom of the pan as evenly as possible. So the thing about walnuts and pecans is that they're very fatty nuts, and so you've got a lot of yummy, healthy fats in this crust, but which makes it really soft too, which is fine because this is going to go in the freezer and become firm. So just press it in, and again, make it as even as possible, but don't kill yourself trying to be perfect. You know that my cooking is never about being perfect. That's what it looks like. So this is gonna go into the freezer to set while we prepare the filling. So I'll be right back. So now let's prepare the filling. And I have my recipe so that I don't mess it up. Okay, so we're gonna do 3/4 of a cup of mashed banana. So I'll either use regular bananas or I'll use apple bananas. I'm just using what I have on hand. And I'm assuming that if you are not in Hawaii or a tropical place, then you probably don't have apple bananas on hand. Maybe you do. So I'm gonna start with 2 bananas and just mash it and see how much we get. You can mash them on a plate, you can mash them in the bowl. These are pretty soft, so it's easy. It's exactly 3/4 of a cup, so that's perfect. So we're gonna put this right into the mixing bowl. So for the filling, the banana is what makes the, that's what makes the filling sweet. There's no added sweetener, which is great. So this is a super yummy treat that's healthy, which is nice because, you know, right now we all want extra treats, and I know I'm trying to stay healthy, and I encourage you to stay healthy too, as much as possible. Okay, now we need 1 teaspoon packed of lime zest, and then we're gonna juice the lime. So always, if you're doing lime zest and lime juice, always zest the lime first, because if you juice it, it makes it really hard to, I mean, obviously you wanna zest it when the lime is whole. Sometimes I do it in the reverse way and it doesn't work very well. So I'm actually gonna zest this onto my cutting board so I can measure. You don't have to be exact, but I like to make sure I get enough in there because the lime zest really makes it delicious, and it makes it really pretty too, because then you have all of those little green flecks. So these are organic Persian limes. I picked up a bag from Whole Foods the last time I was there. And when you're zesting any kind of citrus, you want to make sure that it's organic, because otherwise with conventional citrus, the peel is actually treated with different substances to keep it fresh. So best to go with organic. And I always wash them, you know, ahead of time as well. So these limes are kind of small. It's definitely going to take 2, maybe a little bit more. So my kids love these bars. I even let them have these bars for breakfast sometimes because they're full of healthy fat. They've got protein from the nuts, lots of fiber. They're really filling. They're delicious. You know, it's way healthier than like just a piece of toast or a waffle or something like that. Okay, so we've got 2 limes zested, and let's see. I think I'm gonna do 1 more because I love my lime zest. Be really careful when you're using a microplane. It's super easy to grate your fingers. It's not fun. And if you don't have a microplane and you're making my recipes, I highly recommend getting one, because if you haven't noticed, I use a lot of citrus zest in my recipes, especially lemon and lime zest. Okay, that should be good. So I'm gonna pack it all in there. Yeah, this needed 3 of those little limes. So that goes in. then we are gonna cut the limes. Little trick to get those juices going in there. Roll the limes with pressure to soften them up, and it makes it easier to get all the juice out. It's also a good way to get out some aggression and massage your hands. Okay. So we need 3 tablespoons of fresh lime juice. You could also use lemons for this recipe, but the lime really makes it delicious. I'm just gonna use, let's see. I just wanna squeeze the limes into a little jar so that I can measure it out how much lime juice we have. So my recipes always end up being these happy accidents, and I'm just glad that when my kids were little and I was home all the time, much like now, I would write down recipes as I created them. That's how I created my recipe blog. So these are pretty tart, these bars, but it's super delicious. It's kind of like key lime pie, but really healthy and better, I think. So now I'm just folding the limes in half and pressing them again to get all that juice out. And if you don't have a citrus press, I highly recommend getting one. Okay. I'm sorry. Can you see that? So that's a lot of lime juice, but we want 3 tablespoons. 1, 2, 3. Oh, we actually have extra. I'm not gonna put it in. I think that will probably be plenty. Okay, now we just need coconut butter and a tiny pinch of salt. So you probably have seen me use coconut butter before, but I just wanna show you when you open your jar of coconut butter, sorry there's a glare, but, and I've used this one before and opened it before and mixed it before, but the coconut oil floats to the top and the coconut solids go to the bottom. So you have to mix it together. You have to stir it. And it is really hot here today. It's in the 80s, and so this at room temperature is quite soft. Again, if you're somewhere where it's cold and it's solidified at room temperature, then you're going to want to place the jar in a bowl of hot water to soften it, and then you can mix it all together. So you can see now it's nice and creamy and it's all integrated. So we need half a cup. And this is what gives the bars this yummy creaminess. It's kind of like ice cream. Okay, so that just goes straight into the bowl. You can use a spatula, you know, I just use my fingers. Okay. So now we have to mix this all together. And the way that I like to mix it is by using a hand blender, because it makes it really smooth, and then you don't have to clean out your blender container and nothing gets stuck in the blender container. So I've got this guy. It makes it really smooth. Just be sure to keep your fingers out of there. I actually once got my finger stuck in there because I was cleaning it out, because I don't use spatulas, and I pressed the button and I sliced my finger pretty bad. I didn't need stitches, but it was bad. So I'm gonna remove this and then I'm gonna clean it out. There we go. So you want it to be totally smooth, like pudding. You can use your blender or your regular blender to do this, but this is how I've done it since the beginning, and I just love how smooth the filling gets when you use a hand blender. And actually, the Vitamix will do that too, or regular blender will, but I just love that there's minimal cleanup with the hand blender. That's yummy. I'm actually gonna add more lime juice. The riper your bananas, the sweeter they will be. And then you might need to add extra lime juice, because you really do want these to be tart. You don't want them to be overly sweet. Although when things are frozen, they taste less sweet than when they're hot or room temperature. That's good. I'm just gonna add the rest. Sorry if I'm grossing you out using my fingers. Maybe I'll just eat this entire batch myself, not share them with my kids. Okay, I'm gonna grab the prepared crust and then we're gonna pour this in. So the crust looks the same. It's not totally hardened, but it doesn't need to be. So now you just pour the filling right on top. So we're at almost 25 minutes. Doesn't take very long to make these. And I've been talking, and you know, that tends to make things take longer. So if you make these, it probably won't even take 25 minutes. All right, and I am gonna grab my spatula to get all of this goodness out of here. So I made up this recipe one day when Felix was a baby. He was taking a nap, and I had all the ingredients in my house. I just started collecting the ingredients and kind of placed them on the counter, and I was like, I know all of these ingredients are gonna taste great together. I don't know what I'm gonna make, but I'm gonna make something. And they really turned out. And in fact, this recipe turned out on the first try, which is basically how it goes with my recipes. So that's pretty cool. So there you go, it's in there. And then you're just gonna smooth it out. It doesn't take a lot to smooth it out because it's pretty soft. And just kind of get it into the corners. Make it, again, as even as possible. So yummy, so pretty. So this is gonna go into the freezer for about 4 hours. And then when they're done, all you do is you take it out of the freezer, leave it on the countertop for maybe like 10 minutes, and then you just lift the parchment out. Lift it straight out, put it on a cutting board, and then you just use a large knife and cut it into bars. You'll have a whole slab, so just cut the slab into bars, however big you want to make them. And then you can keep it in the freezer or just keep it in the fridge. When you keep them in the freezer over like more than, say, a few days, they do tend to get pretty hard, but then you just take them out and let them thaw out a little bit, or just keep them in the fridge. So I might add to this video to show you what it looks like when it's done, but I probably won't get to that. So I hope that you make these, and I hope that you love them, and if you do, please let me know, and happy quarantine snacking. I'm back. So the magic bars are all set up. It's actually been a couple of days because I didn't even have time to get to these yesterday. So I just wanted to show you how I take them out of the pan and cut them and everything. So I took this out of the freezer about 20 minutes ago and let it thaw out a little bit. You want to make sure that you don't have to force it out of the pan. You just want to be able to lift it out. So I'm going to show you. So there, it's all set. Oh, there's such a glare, but it is all set. And you just kind of jostle the paper a little bit, and you pull it out, just like that. It's super easy. And then put it on your cutting board. Move the paper away. So see, you've got this beautiful slab of banana lime magic bars. So it's on the parchment, and just keep it on the parchment when you cut it. So it's still very frozen, but it's pliable. And I'm just gonna cut it into bars. See, just like that. That did not work out perfectly in terms of size, but that's okay. There's always kind of an end piece, and they don't have to be the same. So yeah, I just cut them like that, and then I'll probably cut them again. Got my pretty plate. So you can plate them if you're about to serve them, or put them in a storage container with a tight-fitting lid, and you can keep them in the fridge or you can keep them in the freezer. I like to keep them in the freezer because I like them really cold. And then just let them thaw out a little bit. They will be hard when they first come out, but if you just let them thaw, it works out great. So there you have banana lime magic bars. And I think that I should taste this so that you know how good they are. But that's what they look like. See? They're so good. The crust is nice and nutty from the nuts. It's a little bit salty. You've got the sweetness from the dates. And it's soft like a Lara bar, but not too soft. It holds together. And then the filling is creamy like ice cream, and it's only sweetened with bananas, which is amazing. There's no refined sugar in this entire recipe. It's tart, and I'm glad that I added all that lime juice because it's not even too tart. It's perfect. It's really fresh. It's tart. It's really yummy. It's creamy. It's just as good as ice cream. I highly recommend it. And I haven't had breakfast yet, so it's gonna be like a little breakfast a little breakfast snack, as we call it in my house. If you make this recipe, please let me know. I hope you love them.